how long did this last? And I said, well, I learned a whole lot more than I ever learned in graduate school, which was 3 years. And this was a much more intense and thorough course. So I learned way more in this question and answer period, however long it took, which I don't know, than I'd learned going to the University of California, Berkeley.
Well, let's go through some of those questions.
Okay.
I don't know if we can tackle all of them, but let's go through some of them. What are some of the most important ones that you felt like you asked? I know you ask about, let's say, for example, you ask about Jesus in the Bible. You said, is that all that Jesus did? You know?
Right. And they said that, it was funny because this is in the Bible. I didn't know it at the time, but they said that if they'd written down all the things that Jesus did, it would fill all the books in the world. The world couldn't even hold all the books about what Jesus did when he was in this world. And you know, Jesus is alive today. Jesus has been around from the beginning and is still around. And the reason why Christianity exists, and the only reason why it exists, is because millions of people have experienced his love, his presence, his power. They've experienced him in some way in their lives. And there are millions and millions of people, and there have been for over 2,000 years, that know that he is real, you know, and that he is what God has sent to us so that we can have a proper relationship with God.
And they told you that what's contained that he did much more, but what's contained within the pages of the Bible is all that we need to know to do what we're supposed to do on earth to get to heaven, to be with him.
You know, those 4 little Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, seem so little, but when you try and preach them every Sunday, there's so much there that there's more than a lifetime's worth of learning and preaching and understanding. In what we know more than enough about Jesus to know that we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. You talked also about how we got here and when God began and when he began, or was he always there? Talk about that for us.
Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting, I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're asking, but that the creation didn't happen once a long time ago, and like, you know, that old idea that the clockmaker made the clock and then wound it up and it's been sort of like ticking ever since.
Yeah.
That God has been doing the creation and is doing the creation, and that we are invited to be a part of this. We have this, one of the terms for God is the creator. And it says we're made in the image and likeness of God, and we're invited to participate in the creation. And in this life, one of the ways that we do this, an obvious way, is to have children and to raise them. I mean, what more creative act could you possibly want, and what a more awesome responsibility than to have children and be responsible for their nurture and education and well-being.
And you wrote that he is a part of each and every one of us, and that he takes great joy in seeing each and every human being, but that seems so mind-boggling given the tremendous population on our earth that he's actually able...
But the irony is that for God it's so easy. You know, for God's conscious... See, because we can only project our sense of consciousness onto God and anthropomorphize God, but God's consciousness permeates everything. And one of the terms that we use for this is the Holy Spirit, that Spirit of God in the ways that God has revealed God's self to us. That Spirit is everywhere and through everything. You know, God is with the creation, and God is present to us. And we can either be aware of that and act accordingly, or we can be oblivious to it and deny that.
If you had not been sent back to earth, where might you have gone after you had left the angels and Jesus? What would you have gone to heaven at that point because you had been purged, or would you have had to go to another point where you'd have to learn something else before to reach a higher level, then another higher level?
I don't honestly know the answer, so I can only speculate, but I wasn't ready to go to heaven. I mean, they made it really clear to me that I was not a candidate at that point.
Were you shown where other people were going?
There are places where I could have gone and matured spiritually in God's whole creation, but I can't comprehend it all. It's way too beyond my understanding.
But you saw that? They gave you a vision of that?
Yeah.
So people...
See, the thing that people don't realize is that we constrain God and make God so small after our image. But God's love for us is without limit and so vast that God will do exactly the right thing for that individual, which God knows intimately what they need to develop in their spiritual journey.
And you wrote that heaven is nothing like the image we have of heaven here on earth.
No, and I don't understand, because it's really, sad. Heaven is the center of all the creative activity of the universe. And of course, what's in the midst of heaven would be God, which is the source of everything that is. God is the source of not just life, but light, energy, space, time. There is nothing that isn't from God. And so to go into the unlimited variety of heaven and experience of heaven is the greatest joy in the whole universe. Everybody, every awake spiritual being in the universe wants to go to heaven and be with God. And the only beings that don't want to do that are beings that are tremendously deceived. And so when I use the word awake, anyone that wakes up realizes that heaven is the next step. That's what you want to go to, and you want to live a life that would qualify you to be there.
Because I know even in the Catholic Church it's taught that based on your spiritual level when you die, you go to a different level.
Right.
That some people might be at a higher level in heaven. And, of course, the argument is, if you're in heaven, you're happy anyway, so what does it matter?
Right, and you've got all the time in the world to advance and grow. It's not like you're going to be stuck there forever. You'll move on and grow.
And did you physically see souls or people speaking with, I know you wrote in your book maybe they would be speaking with a saint who had died before them. You saw that?
Yes,
okay.
They showed me that.
Okay. So that would be one way to attain that higher spiritual level you're talking about.
Right. And God doesn't coerce us. God's not going to do like surgery on us and make us right. God's going to let us grow into it at our own rate. Yeah.
Which is forever.
Yeah.
But what about religions? I know you got to talk about religions. You ask, which is the best religion out there? And you were expecting him to answer what?
Presbyterian, Methodist, Catholic, So I expected to hear, become a Southern Baptist. That's what I expected God to say, Jesus to say to me. And instead, what he said was, there are good people in bad religions, and there are bad people in good religions, and that he told me, and this was specific to me, to seek out the religion that brought me closest to God, which ultimately, when I came back to this world, after months of trying to figure out what in the world that would mean, I went back to the tradition that my parents had raised me in, and that I'd grown up in, and that's the religion that I all of a sudden realized, boy, this really fits like a, glove, because it was so much part of my formation as a child.
Well, what about the teaching, though? Since you're a Protestant, and nowhere in here do you ask him,